call was coming in. Sorry for the glitches. Sorry.
All right. Thank you very much. Better understand.
Okay. Okay.
While Tunde projects the program of event, I would like to call on the chapter's publicity secretary, Dr. Oge, to take the floor.
Okay, the matter is resolved. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To you all. So, without wasting much of our time, I would like to give you a short briefing on your safety while at the meeting. So, we ask you to put yourself in the right headspace so that you'll be able to be productive while at this meeting. Then click on the hand raise button to signal when you want to speak. And when you're talking, please will ask you to be audible enough so that we won't have to strain our ear to hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
So we also ask that you be aware of your surrounding and make sure that your background is professional and appropriate enough. Then you mute your microphone when you're not talking, because hearing alien echo noise from the background can be very frustrating. And very importantly, we asked you register with your real identity to enable us capture the number of participants and their names. So we pray that you stay seated and stay present, because you might miss out on important information and opportunity that you may have to give input. And generally, we ask you to be aware of your environment, particularly now the country is going through some crisis. So you should be very careful of your environment and make sure you stay at safe places. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable PS, for that safety brief. Nobody can do it better like you've done it now. That's a lot to help us, especially this time. We proceed immediately. If we look at the projected program of events, I will just give an opening remark quickly. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the president who has just joined the call. President, you're welcome. Earlier on, we had the president-elect giving us the go-ahead to proceed. We have many people on the call, and in due course, we will introduce them, and the president will help us introduce the ESCO on board. As we roll through the slide with the help of Tunde, it's an honor for us as a chapter at this point in time to have graced this edition of our technical meeting. Some top experts that everybody will want to listen to. I'm not taking it away from the platform NAPE has created. Just within 10 minutes, we are already 100 people on the call. And I heard from Tunde, the secretariat, that over 200 has already registered. And our hope is that it will be worthwhile your time. So if you're at the office, relax, grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. If you're at home, oh, that's the best. Just stay put. And yeah, I can promise you the best is on the way. Then if on the road, perhaps on transit, you may need to stop by the bus side or bus stop so that you don't miss a thing. So over the time, we have our ESCOs on this call. The welcome statement was made by our very amiable and beautiful Deputy Coordinator, Dr. Adobe Okeke, who is on the call. We also have Dr. Chumuko. He is our General Secretary. He is also on the call. Chumuko, if you can hear me, can you say hi to us? Okay. Before now, we also have heard from our Publicity Secretary. Awka is blessed with beautiful ladies. So no doubt we have them. We have Dr. Oge Chukwu Onyemesli. He's a Publicity Secretary. Currently in France, and he's on the call, is Dr. Kelvin Chima. He is our Editor-in-Chief. It's like technical chair. Chima, if you can hear us, please, can you greet us from France?
Hello, good morning, my dear people, and good afternoon from here. Good to be on this meeting today. Thank you, my coordinator.
Thank you very much, Chima. We also have on the call Dr. C. Austin. Austin is our Financial Secretary. Earlier on, he has been. Austin, if you're on the call, please greet the house. Okay, perhaps he joins us later. We also have our treasurer, Dr. Ibeneme Sabinus. I know he was trying to join us earlier on. Okay, Sabinus, please greet us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, my coordinator. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. We also have the person that makes our YP section to bubble, and he's no other than George Okeke, and he's on the call. George, please, can you greet the house?
Okay, good morning all. Thank you, my coordinator. I'm glad to be here.
Good, good. And we cannot do anything without the person that is gonna grace this occasion today, our advisory council member. We will hear more of him. We are talking about Professor Nwajide. While we roam through the slide, it may be good for us to know that this is the third in the series. The first we had was the gas utilization opportunity, a case for cleaner energy and economic development. This was given around March by the managing director, CEO, that's Orient Petroleum. It was a great lecture, and I'm glad to tell us that we have his slides, we have the recordings, and it's in the NAPE archive, followed by the wonderful one by Professor Igwe, who is now the current Dean of Physical Science, UNN. He gave us a talk on critical environmental impact signatures and footprints in a consistently evolving energy regime. And it may interest us to know that on a physical meeting, he will be in Abuja. He should be in Abuja now, delivering a physical meeting on a related subject. And today, we have who I will use the term of Selena Williams. If you're on the news lately, you could hear Selena Williams say, "I'm not retiring, I'm evolving." Such could be attributed to Professor Nwajide. He keeps evolving. At the point you think he's dropping the ball, he's taking it to another level. As we speak, there are some new publications which he may unravel even in the course of this. We are glad to have him. And he will be taking us through the topic. I wouldn't like to take more of our time. I will quickly introduce the chairman of this occasion, who is our own We are proud of him, one of the NAPE's finest, Dr. Joe Ejedawe. He will chair this occasion. Before he comes on board, we have a tradition so that I wouldn't fail in that. I will ask that while he hold brief, I would like to call on the secretary to quickly, before bringing in the chairman, and before bringing in the president, who will introduce the chairman, the president remark, I would like to quickly call on the secretary to show us the minute of the last meeting, not necessarily to read it. The minute have been sent to chapter members, and it has been published on the NAPE Awka chapter platform. All we just need is 2 people that were present in the last meeting to adopt this minute. Please, our secretary, Chimuko, you have the floor so that we roll. Okay, I just heard from Chimuko. He's saying he cannot hear himself. Chimuko, confirm if you can hear us. Okay. So that we can buy more time, please, by the raise of hand, can we have 2 people adopt the minutes of the last meeting? Okay. We
Yes.
have Professor Mode, and we have Izuchukwu Obiade, Professor Mode and Professor Izuchukwu Obiade. We even have 3. We have Mishahu Abdullahi, so Mode and Obiade. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Quickly, I would like to call on our president, Dr. James Edet, to please address us and introduce the chairman, and so that we can fly freely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dim. Let me say that I have to join this meeting using my mobile phone because I am in Akwa Ibom State in Uyo, and my MiFi does not work here because I have a Smile MiFi, and I'm having problems trying to get any network to connect. Be that as it may, I still have some data on my phone, so I'm using my phone. So to kickstart, let me say on behalf of the Executive Committee of NAPE, the Advisory Council, the Board of Trustees, as well as all the emeritus fellows and the fellows on this call, let me welcome everybody to what is going to be a very interesting topic. And I'm sure that able evolving Bushman is going to do justice to it. I don't know what the Bushman is doing in the classroom, but I am sure we are going to have a good lecture and insight into this topic as will be presented by him, because I'm sure that Professor Nwajide is coming here with a lot of data from the field, which he is going to marry with what we know in the industry and in the classroom and in the projects. So that's going to be a holistic view. And I am sure that people who are going to listen to this are going to take a lot back. Especially, let me also thank the able chairman, Dr. Joe Ejedawe. I haven't seen Joe in many years. We only talk on the phone, but I'm sure that Joe is going to do a whole great job being the chairman of this occasion. Let me even say that this topic falls right within his purview. So there will be no challenges, and I don't expect any. So let me say a very big thank you to the Awka Owerri chapter for putting this up, and all the executives of the Awka Owerri chapter. And we continue to appreciate you, and we want you to continue to strive for excellence and continue to take the chapter forward. Sorry, I can't be there physically. I would have loved to be there, but I'm sure that my virtual presence, and I'm going to stay on till the end of the session. And we hope that we have a great lecture in prospect that we are all going to benefit from. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my president. We now yield the floor for Dr. Joe, the chairman. My chairman, you have the floor.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to chair this occasion. The topic is intriguing, bringing, or rather linking outcrops to our petroleum system. So my job is pretty simple. I'm only to introduce the speaker, and then at the end of it all, ask people to ask questions, and we listen to the answers. Before I start, let me read the citation for the guest speaker. Everybody knows CS. Well, I know him as CS, and the president has just called him a bushman, which is understandable since he's always in the bush and he wants us to understand how the bush relates to petroleum system. Sonny Nwajide hails from Alo in Idemili, South Local Government area of Anambra State. He schooled at the famous Dennis Memorial Grammar School, Onitsha, and studied geology at University of Ibadan and the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. His geological practice commenced at the Geological Survey of Nigeria, where his initial assignment as a field geologist was the mapping of the basement terrain around Ilorin. You can see that he's well tutored and schooled in field mapping, so we are not surprised at this presentation. His in-service postgraduate specialization was in sedimentology, and he earned the best doctoral scholar at UN in 1982. He also attended development courses, earning certificates in mineral sands mining in Australia and training consultancy in the UK. These credentials stood him in good stead to serve the Geological Survey of Nigeria as the publications and training officer. He also had part-time lectureship stints teaching sedimentology at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, University of Jos, and University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He later joined the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited. That's where we actually worked closely together. There he served as a regional geologist, and his duties included indoctrinating new geologists and petroleum engineers in applied modes of petroleum geosciences. I didn't realize he was doing indoctrination. I would have done something about that, but here we are. I must add that he was the let me say, the core arm of sequence interpretation using well logs in Shell at the time. He has published some 60 scholarly papers in areas of sedimentology and stratigraphy, as well as full-length books covering anthropology, sedimentary basin analysis, petroleum geology, and field sedimentology. He's still publishing, I think we all know that. These contributions have earned him such accolades as the NMGS NNPC Professor Richard Raymond Medal, the NMGS Donatable Prize for Research and Training, and the highest honor in NAPE, Harriet Adams Award. He's a fellow of both NMGS and NAPE and serves the latter on the advisory council. He currently offers consultancy services, physically and virtually, to several institutions as a facilitator of class and field courses in petroleum and classical geosciences. Well, he's happily married, and I can attest to that. So, Prof, I'd like to welcome you, and please, we are now open for you to address us on analyzing hydrocarbon systems on the basis of outcropping analogues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tunde, can you start off the slideshow? Thank you.
It's not in presentation mode. Still not in presentation mode.
Yes, it's coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. The president of NAPE, representing the EXCO and all the top-notch echelons of NAPE. The chairman of this occasion, Dr. Joe Jedaway, the coordinator of the Awka Owerri chapter, and all the members of the executive, all the fellows of NAPE, and all the ladies and gentlemen who are giving me the honor of listening to my presentation. I welcome you very much. And I hope we get to learn a few things from the presentation, the questions and answers. The topic is clear. It sounds like analyzing hydrocarbon systems on the basis of outcropping analogues. Next. Now, my posts will be general introduction. The hydrocarbon systems, just a reminder of the general things we know about hydrocarbon systems, then field geology, and an attempt to marry numbers 2 and 3, culminating in reservoir attributes. Then the basic things we have learned from field geology, essentially the diagnosis of environments of deposition. How would the environments of deposition control reservoir behavior? And the very last bit is what have we learned from the study we have gone through? Next. Outcrop has two general usages. We are just walking on the road and you see an exposure of sandstone or shell, that's an outcrop. But there is another meaning that makes it much larger. When we say a formation as we see it on a geological map, stripped of the soil cover, the total area on the surface of the earth underlain by a given formation is the outcrop area of that formation. That's another definition. And once we remove the regolith, that's the soil cover, or whatever is on fresh rock, the area it covers on a given geological map is the outcrop. So we can use that along with the ordinary exposure we can see on road cuts, on excavations in gullies, riversides, and all that. Many aspects of the hydrocarbon systems can be simulated on outcrop. And that's one thing we can actually glean when we look at the rocks in the field. Because when we're talking about field sedimentology, it can double as routine instructional course delivered by lecturers in the classroom as well as in the laboratory. And we are now going to use it as practical petroleum geoscience also. So we can begin to connect the two. The objective of this presentation, therefore, is simply to catch a glimpse of the subsurface by studying the surface. Next. And what I'm talking about is particularly applicable in frontier basins, where detailed field work will now include the search for indicators of hydrocarbon plays, such as traps and fascist changes and subtle unconformities. These will be giving us an idea of what's really below, much deeper. So, field data, which we gather just by normal field work, or bushwork if you like, would easily be integratable with seismic, and that will begin to give us an impression of what is there deeper down. And from there, we begin to appreciate the components that comprise a hydrocarbon system. All Nigeria's sedimentary basins are inland, except two: Niger Delta Basin and the Hami Basin. All the others, the exposures of Benue Trough, Bida, the Lamadan area, Chad, these are all to be considered as inland basins. Next. Now, continuing the introduction where we still are, we have to have some assumptions in mind that outcropping stratigraphic sections broadly replicate subsurface intervals, which we normally see after coring and bringing out full-length cores in particular. We can also gain these from small cores, finger-like ones, even from chippings. But when we have full-length cores, then we realize that however deep we go, we still get lithologies that look like those we see on the surface. We also have to note that interpretations based on outcrops may completely mostly apply to the surface equivalents, and whatever environments of deposition we eventually arrive at, analyzing surface features may be applicable. And from these, geochemists will be able, organic geochemists will be able to discuss thermal history of the given basin. So, next. Carbon system elements, second section of this talk. The critical elements we are familiar with generally studying petroleum geology will be in two parts, the stratigraphic elements and structural and timing elements. Rocks, when we are talking stratigraphic elements, reservoir rocks, source rocks, fill rocks. Our fixation in oil industry is often about reservoir rocks. But we have to know that with all these others, the reservoirs won't have, whatever reservoirs are there, they won't have any charge. Then we get the structural and timing elements, and we talk about the trap, the structural style of that. And the histories are those of the basin, generation, and migration. Next. Let's take a look at the petroleum systems we listed, where they are illustrated on the right-hand side. There we are looking at a seal, which here doubles as a source rock. So we can begin from source rock and see it doubling as a seal. Generation takes place, migration occurs, and without the structure we're looking at there, the dome-like structure, we are not in a position to have the reservoir, need the material generated preserved or reservoir. Let's take a good look, closer look at what the reservoir is made of. And ladies and gentlemen, let me confess that I'm not dealing with anything other than classic reservoirs, where we have essentially sandstones, a plastic material, not carbonate. So if we take a look here, we see that sand grains are usually surrounded by water. And then whatever space is left is where we have the hydrocarbon reserved or reservoir. And when we are talking about next to gross, right bottom, you will see that whatever sand that can get charged within a whole rock section is what is called net to gross. Now, if we are looking at the basin histories and all that, we need all those samples, especially from the source and so on. Next slide, please. The connection, we can ask ourselves this question: which elements of the carbon system are easily demonstrable on outcrop, and what role does each of them play? We're repeating the view graph here in order to see the disposition of the source rock, reservoir rock, seal, structural style, migration, and tracking. We will take each of these in turn. Next. We're talking of source rock. It's usually shale, and it is known that 90% of all organic matter in sediments is actually in black shales, deposited under anoxia and over time transformed under heat and pressure to kerogen that releases the hydrocarbons. The organic matter is usually derived from phytoplankton, mainly marine algae, transformed into oil. Coals are the main source of gas. Bottom right is the coal occurrence, very well known in any area. This is from Marmo Formation. Then on the left, around Nkoro, not far from Leru, is where we have what can as well be taken as a sample of the typical source rock. Next, generation, we can see the schema here, which is a burial of organic matter charged shale. 65 degrees centigrade will begin to yield oil, and that is buried into what is called the hydrocarbon kitchen. Then at around gas is released. These fluids migrate upward. They are trapped in a dominant situation, which is the commonest of all the trap types. We'll see more. But the basic thing is, during transmission, how does oil really move? Through the four spaces left after the grains and water and anything else like cement, matrix, then these have taken quite a lot of space. The oil has to squeeze through what is called the port route, and that's demonstrated here. Next, a little more about this matter of port route and how much space is actually left. We consider ourselves lucky to really have some space within which the hydrocarbons can first squeeze through during migration and then up to the point of reservoiring. You see that the space left there for hydrocarbon is not so much when water has taken its place. And here we are discussing just grains without matrix and without cement. When we introduce these in later slides, you realize we don't have a lot of space for hydrocarbons. So the much we have to thank we have to be grateful for. Next slide, please. Now, when we're talking about seal, it's the impermeable rock that precludes through flow. And it's usually shell, but may also be meteorite, very fine limestone, then tightly cemented sandstone can actually be preclude oil from moving. And that's what constitutes a seal. Here, I'm emphasizing that a seal could actually have been a source rock, depending on the depth of burial. Now, here on the surface, occasionally, as you are looking at outcrops, you can as well see what is called a farm ground. This may be considered analogous to a seal. Because that farm ground, in this particular case, this farm ground occurs there within sandstone, which here, this photograph is from the Okibo area where sandstone is exposed. And here is a bioturbated surface, which is essentially heterogeneous, and it's going to seal, it's not going to allow any penetration across it. And that's why it could also be a seal. And here is simply shown as an analogous surface that can seal. Next slide, please. Migration. This is buoyancy induced. Usually water, which is universally present, will normally allow for migration to begin to take place upwards, and in some cases laterally. But when pressure from a source rock is pushing out petroleum, migration can be downward. That is initial migration, which is actually expulsion. When this happens, then oil or gas will proceed unless obstructed by a seal, as in a trap, as you can see on both diagrams. Variable timing of trap formation will normally be responsible for eventually accumulating the hydrocarbons, or else it will seep off. On the left side of the diagram on the bottom right, seep takes place because there is nothing to block it, so it gets to the surface of the ground. Tell us, notice on the high seas, they notice glimmer or shimmer on top of the ocean waters. That's because petroleum, which is being formed much deeper down, without any seal, would continue to escape. Now, the meaning of this is that so much petroleum has been escaping. Next slide, please. This petroleum has been escaping simply because there has been nothing to hold it back, no structure to hold it back, no trap. Oh, in some cases where traps are present, you realize that it may be breached as a result of incompetence. We call it incompetent seal, and that's what you see here. So seeps continue. Such losses have been on for very long geological time, in which case Earth has actually lost enormous volumes of petroleum. Next slide, please. Such kind of loss has been going on for who knows how long, geological time. And women, one of such tips is here on the left-hand side. And these geologists have taken their time to go and search them out. I know some of them. Next slide. Now, trapping and structural style. Trap is a geometric arrangement of permeable rock, which is a reservoir normally, or less permeable rock, which is a seal. And when these are combined with physical and chemical properties of subsurface fluids, the carbons will be accumulated. The books tell us about 3 types: structural, including brute faults, and then stratigraphic types and combination types. If you look on the right-hand side, first you see that it's simply a fault, which is not the classical normal fault we know. Indeed, this particular kind of fault is classified as a kind of chaotic class. And you can see the curvature of the fault line. That curvature eventually makes it parallel to the stratigraphy, and that's why it's called electric faulting. And it's actually a disrupted kind of surface, such that the left side, which is the hanging wall, becomes thickened. And the curvature onto the fault cap is what makes it a runoff and actually produces an accommodation space for oil accumulation. The lower figure is the map, while the upper figure is a section. If we look on the left, we see a section which, to all intents and purposes, would resemble what is on the top right in the right-hand side figure. The professor standing here on the standing on the lower part, actually his head is touching what's actually a curvature. And then the professor sitting down has his feet on what has a curvature. And this is regarded as a growth fault and rollover. It's called a growth fault mainly because the part that is disrupted actually makes the throw increase downwards. That throw, the ZB over ZU, down thrown over up thrown, is invariably, once it's greater than 1, once that ratio is greater than 1, then it's a growth fault. And the curvature into the fault makes it a rollover. This has been noted. Next slide, please. Please don't tell the professors that I use them as scale, please. Now, what we see here is actually a series. Next slide, please. We'll return to this. Next slide. Now, if we take a look here, especially the bottom left, you will see that this matter of curvature is what actually structures the whole material into a, and this has been noted in a landslide. I thank Dr. Joe for this slide. A landslide somewhere in US, not far from the famous Book Cliffs area, illustrates this on the surface. Again, the idea of using an outcrop, features an outcrop, and eventually using them to interpret features found deeper down. And these features deeper down would normally tell us about the topic is talking about, that we can use surface features to simulate and understand what's going on far below, which we can get by seismic exploration. Please do the backwards, back. Earlier slide, please. Yes. Now this one, the right top is one of the most famous figures that ever emanated from the Niger Delta, done by our own Dalkonu with his boss in those days. This is famous because it simply tells us how the structuration in Niger Delta took place and gave us these reservoirs from where we are getting. We have some other kinds of structures or Niger Delta, but this is perhaps most famous. And it's all falls and mineral particles, which you can see on the top. That's the main seismic, which interpreted would now guide the drilling, development, and eventual production. Again, at the bottom left is the figure that shows us both the map and the section for a typical growth fault. Perhaps this is what we're emphasizing this because we don't normally expect it on the surface. Indeed, when some features were discovered and being interpreted on the surface, many people doubted how true that could be. And it's a pity. Many people are saying, where do you find this? The figure we had before this, where the two professors are used as scales, would be at Enugu, and many people have seen it. But sorry, if you still want to go and see it, I apologize that it's being covered by somebody who bought the piece of land and it's something terrible to geology. Next slide, please. Next. Yes, please. Normal fault, again, something you see on the surface, and that could be an analog of a trap deeper down. Next slide, please. Yes, this slide taken from Lopantan, and you can see that guy is almost 2 meters tall. You can see that in this situation, we are looking at not a fault, but a part of an anticlinal limb or a synclinal limb. The top parts of which could as well be used as analogs of structural traps. Next. A kind of summary. generation from source rock, migration. Here, the primary migration should be the expulsion from source rock. Then the secondary migration is from what had actually been reservoired, material that had been reservoired, but the reservoir area is truncated by a fault, which now allows some seeping through it. And that seeping continues, but is into another reservoir, which can eventually be the source of a tertiary migration, which finally you can have a trap and it becomes exploitable, or it seeps away like we have seen. Next. Now, field sedimentology, let's bring back the fact that we are discussing the surface to begin with. That allows us eventually to have a glimpse of the subsurface. So the general thing we know about all the environment summarized here in a cartoon is that there's land, there's marginal marine area, and then there's deeper marine area. Where we have meandering rivers and braided rivers and all that would eventually get into the sea and give us the area where allowing for the existence of all the elements eventually can have a lot of this delta becoming very good prospect. Then we get from there, pass through the shelf edge and get into the shelf proper, and get into that area that is now the new frontier, especially in our own offshore. Next, environmental deposition. Now we are talking field sedimentology, so we get ready for field work. Ordinarily, we have to prepare, and this is something that people are not taking seriously enough. There are stories of people who just driving casually along the road, see a good road exposure, they now stop their car, do some shots, and print it. Some data is available for writing something. But when you want to do field sedimentology, you have to plan things, you have to organize things, determine the cost, establish project objectives, plan your itinerary, decide when to go, especially as relates to the weather, determine the technical expertise, who comes along with you, and what you really know, what you want to pick up. Then decide what to bring along, arrange your welfare, then necessary permits if you have to get into people's property, and then for sample collection and all that, and get your welfare ready. Now, there is a general development in this country, quite unfortunate, which is impinging on all this. So you've got to provide your security. Next slide, please. Next slide. Security, not underrated in any way. Hypothetically speaking, when you're talking, excuse me. Hello. Hello. Sorry for the little interruption. Please, the slide here is showing us in a hypothetical situation that the area you have to work on, the main thing is to determine the environment. The main thing. What do you get about it? You log the section according to well-known methods of logging, usually using a template which you populate, get the thicknesses, the textures, the diagenetic state, composition, sedimentary structures, values, and then log samples systematically and allows and integrate data to nominate the environmental deposition. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. An example of what's just been lined out is what we see here. Left side is the outcrop. On the right-hand side is an interpretation that resulted from a systematic logging of and sampling of that outcrop. And studies and interpretation on the right side column. This is from a well-known outcrop there at Omonia, not far from Awka, where we are. It's been a very instructive outcrop because you can do sedimentary structures. You can view sedimentary structures there that lead to very, very important interpretation. Tidal sedimentation, all sorts of tidal structures are interpretable from the sedimentary structures we see here. So we'll get back to some of the footnotes we picked out from here. Next slide. After mapping an area generally, a very important aspect is from lining out the areas underlain by particular rock groups, essentially formations. We have to have the section drawn through in a manner that depicts what's happening in the subsurface, a third dimension, where the map itself is two-dimensional. A third dimension is added by drawing the cross-section. On the right-hand side is the final part of this whole exercise. And it's a very major deliverable of field sedimentology. That's geological map with a section, but finally, 3D paleogeographic scenario. You have to start imagining, not just merely imagining, but with the correct set of structures interpreted and all the environments identified. You now arrive at what you consider to be the paleogeographic model, constructing what was the situation in that place. Here, the effort has been to reconstruct what happened during the deposition of the Eocene Nanka formation. Next slide, please. Then the next chapter is actually reservoir attributes, and we're coming to the applications that will help us take samples, do all the studies on the surface, and then go ahead and try to imagine what's happening deep down. Next. It's actually a component of the carbon system easily studied on outcropping equivalence, which may be regarded as these studies on the surface on typical reservoirs, reservoir material. We are looking at uncharged hydrocarbon containment space. And characterization will be in terms of thickness and geometry, stratigraphy, lithostratigraphy and sequence stratigraphy. Then lithology, texture, grain size, and all the petrographic attributes. It will also include composition, framework material, cement. I put it in red because if we have lots of matrix and lots of cement, we are in danger of not having what we want deep down there. Then, of course, the genetic state is also another destroyer. And sedimentary structures, which are physical, chemical, and biogenic, tectonic structures, folds and fractures, then this will eventually lead us to environments of deposition. Next. The basic configuration of a reservoir system we have gone through. We already have a good picture of what a reservoir should be, that you need a seal on top of it. And of course, very often, and in areas where you don't have what they call oil down to, there is always some water driving the reservoir. Next. When we are doing field work, we are looking at sections, beautiful sections. The guy down there used as a scale, it's about 2 meters tall. that will give you an impression of the thickness of this section, this root cut, which is somewhere in nearby, not far from where Batman marathon is done. On the left-hand side, you see that using gamma ray, we can identify what's actually a reservoir and what's could be a seal. But we have to be very careful that in some cases, for static material, especially microcline that contains potassium, could as well give us a wrong impression of what's a reservoir. So very often you want to see cones. This section here on the right shows what we can, a situation that allows us to identify cycles, positional cycles. We can discern the positional cycles here, and there are two: thickening upward, coarsening upward, and these are major historical steps to take in identifying our environments of deposition. Next slide. So within any sections we identify on the surface, we can do our field work by using comparators to get this grain size, examining closely to see the fabrics as indicated on the left side, whether we are dealing with some imbrication, how the grains are touching, how they are oriented. Then let it be noted, as shown in the colored slide bottom right, that our main interest is the grain size range that includes mainly sand. Could have a bit of coarse silt, could have a bit of the granules, but the basic thing is that we are looking for 63 micron to 2000 micron range, and that's our reservoir material. Next. The reservoir material, again, we can see on the surface as outcrop material. Look on the top left, you see that this is a typical conglomeratic sandstone. Some people may think this is even just conglomerate. And you get an impression of imbrication by looking, the flow must have been from right to the left. Now, on the right-hand side, you're looking at reaction surfaces. The top left figure, photographed from a Saba area. Top right figure, photographed in Fuga area. Again, the same thing, also photographed in Fuga area is bottom left. And then the right-hand side bottom is showing us details of what could be a cross-bed set. Reactivation surfaces are indicated. We will show more of these a bit later. Next. These are reservoirs. Here is a direct comparison between what we see on the surface. On the right-hand side, these are photographs taken from, actually from Fuga area. And then on the left-hand side, we have a core taken from 1200 feet and deeper. Here, we are looking at herringbone kind stratification, which when we see on the surface, we start talking about tidal sedimentation. And also when we see bottom right epsilon material, clay drift, epsilon cross stratification, clay drift, leading us to environment of deposition that has to do with the point bars, particularly well known in deltaic areas. Next. Again, we are looking at right-hand side outcrops, left-hand side deep down, 6,900 feet from a core that's been collected from 6,900 feet. And this core shows us intense bioturbation. On the right-hand side, which is a photograph of the sand in Leru area, you are looking at highly bioturbated sand. This is Ophiomorpha, as you can see, bottom right. Also intense bioturbation. Next. For the tectonic features we see in reservoirs, here, folds and fractures. These are characteristics of reservoirs, which we're talking about. Next. Again, within reservoirs, you can see all of these. And note that clay smear can be some issue. And there are very major studies on clay smears, which you can see top left and so on. Now, write the kind of faults that we have, that we can see characterizing both outcrops and subsurface faults, reverse faults, and ridge or strike slip. Next. Reservoir quality. What are the controls on reservoir quality? We can see on the surface in particular. Project deeper down. Next. These controls will depend very much on the sandstone petrography. Poorly cemented sandstones will give us high porosity, high permeability. Shells, of course, hardly anything that will move out of reservoir. But when we come to well-cemented sandstones, we'll see more of it. We see low porosity and low permeability. So petrography is a very major control. We get there. Next. Porosity improves with increasing grain size sorting. And increasing grain size enhances permeability. These are controls on reservoir quality. Next. Again, we are now talking about reservoir. A very good exposure showing us reactivation surfaces and clay drifts on top of them. On the right-hand side top, more of the clay drips on reactivation surfaces. Bottom left, clay drips again. These three, top right, left, and bottom left, will become barriers. They are here. Clay would be barriers to flow. We are seeing these on the surface. But for the development geologist, he may not know these unless he does some coring. The cores will now tell you are dealing with clay drips, in which case, if you are to produce, you must have to do something about puncturing these clay drips and letting your hydrocarbons flow. You may decide to fracture. The bottom right is placer, where the clay placers are not continuous. Therefore, they will slow down but not impede flow. So they are flow slowers, not flow impeders, while the other three are flow impeders. If you do something about them, when you realize that this is what happens, and you hardly can see these deep down there unless you call. You can see the problem because there's no way seismic can tell you this. Only coring can tell you. Next. Clay is actually a lot of nuisance. It diminishes reservoir quality when its presence of drips I've seen, when it's dispersed as clay particles, even as borofilms, as shown here on the right-hand side. Next. Clay is even worse here. When it occurs as compaction matrix, as mechanically infiltrated material and saltogenic kaolinites. On the left-hand side, you can see these chloride on the right. Chloride is something that can get formed and becomes a thorough nuisance as regards flow. You can see all sorts of features that will make clay a real nuisance. Right? Next slide. More of what clay can do to our reservoir. How it actually can cause occlusion. That is, it can stop flow completely when it occurs, especially as poor bridging on the right. There's no way to flow. It will limit flow for as poor lining in the middle, and as discrete particles, kaolinite and chloride, it will also impede flow. These are what clays can do, impeding flow or occluding the porosity completely. Next slide. We can see these essentially by cutting sections. Once we do a good thin section study, we can see how what should be our pore space, how it gets so, would I say, persecuted in brackets. You'll be so the surprise is that we still have some space left. When the detrital pores is covered by orthogenic pores as overgrowths, when we have calcites precipitated and cement, commonly also with overgrowths, and the pore bed is now so little, and eventually may stop even the to get it all to an extent that hardly any movement can happen. This is our problem. So an extension of our field work is study of these samples in the laboratory. As thin sections, we can see that our reservoir quality is very much controlled by what we can see under the microscope. Next slide. Cement, lots of them. Is often very common as cement, overgrowth in particular, then of course clay, when it becomes converted into clay, into cement from matrix. And carbonate cement evaporates in some cases. Then you have orthogenic carbonates and zeolite. These are also porosity occluding material. Next slide. Now, porosity is our main stake for having the petroleum accumulated. Can we now look at various environments and how they control our petroleum situation? Now, take a look here. A cake has been used to simulate the global environmental setting. So next, the highest levels will be terrestrial, land. Next, shore related, then shell marine and deep marine. If you look at this, the nearer part of the cake, you can see what's happening deeper down. We have depicted this environmental setting earlier, and we go all the way down to where turbidity currents and so on are depositing material of reservoir quality. Next. So, in every environmental setting we have discussed, sand can be deposited and it can as well be a reservoir, both in alluvial setting, deltaic, interdeltaic, near shore, and subsea. These are all areas where the deposition of sand can take place, and they can as well be good environmentally easily identifiable material that is our. Next slide. Those are our motifs we can use to identify these reservoirs wherever we find them. Next. And here we are discussing examples of environmentals in different zones, especially near shore, like we have in our own near shore and shallow offshore material. So we are looking at the plan on top Middle is a section that has to do with channel, and then bottom is delta top. Delta, where we have crossening up. We have finding up, crossening up. These are all indicators of environment of deposition. We need to know these environments of deposition. Next slide. And the environments. So they are usually the components, parts of the whole deposition or setting, and they reflect the impact of particular processes, enabling distinction of such processes. I keep emphasizing environments of deposition. What do they do in relation to our oil and its production? Next. So, if we are looking at the environment of deposition on the left, then the reservoir types and their attributes and production characteristics, we can see that delta distributary canals can be good producers because we have packed can, usually finding out they are, if connected in particular, they can be good producers. Then the coastal area where we have the barrier sands and beaches, prolific. These sands are clean and continuous. Then in classic curves, sheet-like, continuous, well-sorted sands will be good producers. Cultivation may be a negative impact. In some cases, considered positive, but usually often negative. In deep water settings, we have thin sheets, amounts of turbidites and debrites comprising multi-story lithologies. These can also be prolific producers, especially in marine farms, submarine farms that are some parts of which might be in channels. Next slide, please. Now, what's the general impact of environmental deposition? They control porosity, these environments, they control permeability, they control network rust, and they also control lateral variability. So we need to know the environment of deposition so that the production profile and ultimate recovery can be well under our grasp in any given hydrocarbon field. They are required for guiding any series of completers. When you get a completer, note that when a contractor has finished drilling, carries away his rig, you have to bring in a completer to connect the well to your oil. And that is usually by perforation. If the correct environment of deposition is not well known, that perforation can get you in a situation where either gas cloning or water cloning will happen very soon as production begins. So we have to be very careful in studying our reservoirs in order to know how to do the completions. Otherwise, we're in a mess. And we know how a well can cost. In view of the essentiality of environmental deposition in exploration and production, data analysis should aim at correct diagnosis of the environment of deposition. Next slide. Gentlemen, what is the use of our study? We now realize that geosedimentology goes far beyond mere what we call didactic material knowledge, classroom knowledge, even laboratory knowledge. How do we apply these? Geosedimentology is a foundation for virtually all solid based geoscience study of soft rocks. Right? It forms the basis for economic geomaterial exploitation, especially hydrocarbons, as we have been doing. Next slide, please. So, fundamentals of petroleum geology can be grasped by starting from the surface of ground, studying sedimentary areas with thorough field data. Insight into the subsurface, and we can from there eventually see that we are, what the data we're picking on the surface, conclusions we do from that type of data, any set of data will eventually give us the analog deeper down. Hydrocarbon exploration of inland basins of this country will benefit immensely using the approaches here advocated. Next slide. Finally, next slide, please. This is to thank everybody for listening. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Listen for your attention.
Wow.
Today, you can now go off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this amazing presentation, Prof.
My chairman, you have the floor.
Professor Nwajide, for the wonderful presentation. You have done well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. CS, thanks a lot. This is, like I always say, nothing. This is a brilliant presentation. As I said at the beginning, he's the one person who can take us from the bush to the office. And that's exactly what he has done. He has given us examples, and especially local examples, that enable us to relate to what a petroleum system is. He started out by pointing out the geologic elements, components of the petroleum system. He talked about the source rock, the reservoir rock, and the seal. And then he linked that to the processes of trap formation, hydrocarbon generation, and migration. And in all of that, he has tried at every step to link us to actual surface examples that enable us to relate directly to these cases. For source rocks, he looked at he mentioned about the Mamu coal as a potential source for gas, and then the Mporo shale rock outcrop example at Leru, which will be, in this case, a potential source for oil. The seal part was rather intriguing. He brought in the concept of firm ground, and he showed the example at the bioturbated rock sample at Okigwe as an example. Of course, he did mention the normal types of seals we see, the shales, the salt deposits, and so forth. In terms of migration, he mentioned the effect of the lack of seal to the occurrence of seeps at the surface. Again, an illustration of how the process of migration can be observed at the surface in the form of seeps. And he did mention seeps, sheen surfaces in the sea as indications of that also. Then for trapping, he showed the example, outcrop example of a growth fault and the mechanism of its formation in the sense of flotation on the fault plane. And then he showed also at low panther the concept of a fold. He showed the limb of a fold as an indication of folds as trapping components. Then he took us to field sedimentology itself. And he did this by first pointing out to us the need that in doing field work, you have to plan. Planning is very essential. And he especially mentions the need for us in Nigeria today to plan for security coverage. And I can recall when I was with Syscon, we had to plan some company from overseas wanted to come and do field work in Nigeria, and we were trying to put it together. But the cost of security alone was more than the total cost of what would have been done without security. So it was aborted. Security is a main issue. And I think it's a case now where it's very difficult for students to do field work outside. So that's field sedimentology, and he mentioned the need in an outcrop to log a section and what it means to log a section, and then subsequently make a map and draw a cross-section. That is illustrating what occurs in the 2-dimension on the surface and what can be seen by integrating the 3rd dimension in a cross-section. And then he talked about reservoir attributes. And then this is where we actually come to the critical elements of reservoir, or what are the characteristics we will hope to see in a reservoir, and the factors that are positive and those that negate the reservoir quality, essentially. And he mentioned things like cementation, and especially the effect of clays in various forms, on reactivation surfaces, dispersed within the pore spaces, and so forth. These are factors that affect reservoir quality, not essentially in terms of limiting the pore space for the hydrocarbon, and also limiting permeability for production purposes. At the end, we talked about environment of deposition. And this is important because putting all of what he has shown us together is what constitutes the environment of deposition. And you can trace this in an outcrop. You can relate it to what you see in the subsurface in terms of cause, and then it dictates at the end of the day what you will see in terms of predicting what you expect to see in the subsurface, because you do not have all the data that you can observe on the surface, but you can use what you know from the surface as analog for what you will see at depth. And that brings us to the end of the presentation, and I think he has done brilliantly in terms of linking the bush to the office, like I say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Prof, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. The floor is open for questions and comments, and I'm sure CS is available to answer all the questions. Any questions or comments, please?
Okay, my chair. I will allow the PS to recognize them and call them, so Prof can attend to them. My PS, you have to call while there are some hands.
Thank you very much, my chairman, for the wonderful summary. Thank you. So we have few hands up here, and then we'll be taking pray that you will be very brief with your questions and go straight to the point. We have about 10 hands up already. We just take a few. I'll call on Nosike Livinius. Please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to, mine is a quick comment. So I want to thank the executive of NAPE and the organizers, and then our own dear Professor C.S. Nwajide, who is a mentor and the foundation of most of what we are doing today. I want to thank you for this presentation. I pray that in this generation of Internet of Things, digitalization, that we don't lose the geology of things, because digitalization will change, Internet of Things will change, but nature, the rock, will not change. And every founder or fathers of geology has always made sure that we're in touch with nature, with the rock, so that for everything we represent, porosity, permeability, we can.
Can you cut it short, please?
Okay. I think there are some network setbacks, but we were able to hear one or two things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Livinius, for your input.
Hello,
Prof, do you want to take the...
I was understood. Thank you. I thought you heard me.
Prof, did you get what he said?
I must confess that I had the Prof comments, not any direct question.
There was no question.
Yes.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you very much.
My response is thanks very much for your comments, Dr. Livinius. Thank you.
Okay, so we call Professor KK Nwozo. You have the floor.
KK, you're calling me and you're asking questions. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Professor
Hello,
KK
Prof.
Nwozo.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody.
KK,
yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for a very wonderful presentation. Although I didn't expect anything less anyway.
So, are you removing your thanks? Are you withdrawing your thanks?
So, please, Prof.
Yeah.
You have driven home a point we have been preaching for some years now. The core mandate and relevance of analogs to digitals, okay?
Yeah.
Whatever we do these days of insecurity and everything, we try to give excuses so we can stay on the table and do everything. What we tell everybody is that if you cannot see it properly and feel it, it is difficult for you to imagine it accurately.
There's an internet problem here.
Hello?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm hearing him quite well. Huh?
Yes. So it is what we understand from analogs that we can sit back and model using our devices as digitals, okay? So whenever people like you speak and we understand the provenance, the processes and the products, the imaginations begin to get clearer when we sit back behind our laptops and devices to do some soft work. So thank you very much for the insights, and I hope you keep, carrying us along in this journey. Thank you.
Yeah, all I can say is thank you very much for your comments. I wish you the best. Huh? Thank you.
Okay. Ifeyinwa Ofo, please unmute yourself. You have the floor. Ifeyinwa Ofo. Can you hear me? All right, it's like she's not responding. Emeka Ezekwelu. Please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thanks, Prof, and thank you, everybody. So, Prof, I'm only trying to bring up part of the what we learned today. Of course, this is like a refresher course for me. Yeah. You mentioned coal in terms of deposition. Coal being a kind of area of gas bearing, and I'm sure Enugu and the environment are coal, deposited, and which means gas bearing. And we got information the last time by IUP, what do I call it again? NUPRC. Yeah, that there was a kind of fire incidents due to the reservoir around Caritas University the last time. I wouldn't know if there are further implications of this, and does it mean that all around the Enugu right now is a danger because the effect of gas and relating to fire? Are there some proactive steps we are making? Even if it's kind of physical or by awareness on how to actually prevent and take into consideration this effect in case, because definitely it's an imminent thing that can actually happen anytime. I wouldn't know if you get my point. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can be fairly sure of your question, Enugu, you consider to be in danger because the coals there might be generating gas. Following from my mention of the fact that shells generate oil more of the time, and coals generate gas a lot of the way. I think that's about your question. So in that, with that at the background, how safe is the Enugu area? I think that's your question. Especially,
yes, very well. And at the things we are doing in terms of proactive measures to be at alert. Thank you.
Exactly. Now, the point to make in this circumstance is that without the Caritas campus fire, this question would never have occurred to us. But we have to look at the stratigraphy. I think I'll just answer the question very briefly with reference to the stratigraphy of Enugu area. Let us note that the fire emanated from gas that took off, if you like, started flowing when a certain well was drilled into a particular horizon, about 1,000 meters, about 1,000 feet below the general Enugu horizon. But let's remember that the Enugu coal is, so to speak, using even of just that 1,000 feet, Enugu coal is much higher than the source of the gas that ignited in Caritas campus. If that is the case, the Enugu area, which has had coals mined probably from somewhere around 100 years ago, if gas was actually emanating all over, in Enugu area would have, at least once upon a time, caught fire generally. So I'm afraid, let me allay your fears by saying that the gas at Caritas campus is still being investigated as to its source, its nature, composition in particular, although methane is usually assumed. Different from the fact that Enugu coal is much higher in its horizon of occurrence. Therefore, if gas had been emanating from there, especially even since the beginning of the mining of coal in Enugu, then the whole of Enugu would never have been any safe. So I'm afraid I would rather that we take Enugu coal as not really generating that much gas that would make Enugu unsafe. I think I'll leave it here. I want to allay your fears and see the danger. And it's really, the danger is clear that we start thinking of proactive measures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My PS, permission, my chairman, there is a meeting that will be coming up by 1, and the president and the P and almost all the ESCOs will be joining that meeting. I see a lot of hands and I see a lot of chats.
Yeah.
I want to assure you that those questions will be taken, but let's, on the permission of the chairman, Dr. Joe, let's us allow the president to thank the speaker and also the PE to recognize all on the call.
Okay.
You yield to the president.
Hello.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Looking better. You're looking good, my president.
Yeah, I've been able to get some network, so I'm now linked up with my laptop. A very big thank you to the speaker, Professor C.S. Nwajide, my erudite bushman, as I call him. You know, everybody knows that, you know, and it's been very interesting to see him link everything that we get to see in the bush to what obtains in the office, as Dr. Jadawe has pointed out. A very big thank you to the chairman of the occasion, Joe. Jadawe, I hope we get to see very soon. Still got business.
I hope so too.
Joe, I will talk later on that issue. And we need to discuss. A lot has come up and we need to talk about it. But suffice it to say a very big thank you to you for absolutely handling this chairmanship of today's talk, and to the executive committee of the Owerri chapter, a very big thank you for putting this up together. Dr. Oge, I can see you.
Thank you.
Tim, and all the other members, I'm still trying to figure out. Sabinus, excellent. Great. So thank you very much for having me. I have to be up and the other members of the National Executive Council. We have a roadshow meeting with Halliburton, which starts at 1 in the next 9 minutes. So I have to disconnect and join them. So I don't know, maybe the rest of you can stay on so you can listen to the questions and try to work your way around it. Even though I've noticed that not a lot of people are asking questions, people are making comments. I would have loved to ask a question, but I'll leave that for another time. Thank you very much, EXCO, and keep it up, keep the good work up. And to all the people who have facilitated this, a very big thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my president. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim, for the compliments.
Thank you, CS.
My PE, please, if you're on the call, you have the floor.
Dr. Dim, thanks so much. I'll just quickly continue from the thanks from the president to all those who made this event possible, the speaker, the sponsors, the Awka Owerri chapter of the chairman Agenda FNAPE, as well as the speaker, Professor Nwajide FNAPE also. And also to the members of the Board of Trustees who are all members of the Advisory Council, the EXCO of NAPE, as well as the EXCO of the chapter, our fellows emeritus, as well as members of the NAPE Secretariat who work in the background to ensure that all of these our events are successful. We also want to thank our NAPE members, guests, and friends of NAPE, as well as members of the APG Africa. I see a number of them on the call also.
Yeah.
Just to flag off the, as we get to the end of the third quarter of the year, the heads up on the preparations towards the NAPE conference in November. Actually, it starts in October with the pre-conference work. A number of events lined up between October and November to make it a very successful conference year. This is our 40th conference anniversary. And so the conference proper happens from 13th to 17th of November at a quarter in Lagos. But a number of events that will be before that, and I'm sure that we will be seeing flyers of these events as they happen. The theme of this conference is global energy transition and the future of the oil and gas industry, evolving regulations, emerging concepts and opportunities. It's a very topical issue, a topical theme, and I'm hoping that we will all join hands to make it successful, be it through volunteerism, exhibiting from the companies and the academia, as well as sponsorships. And so we look forward to hearing from members of your chapter how they will continue to support this initiative. So I'll just leave it at that, and again, thank you all for these one insightful event today.
Thank you very much, my PE. Thank you very much. We appreciate you on the call.
So much.
We appreciate our National Publicity Secretary. She's no other than Tubosun.
Tubosun.
Also on the call. We really appreciate. She has been working behind the camera to see that we are doing great as a chapter. Like we say, we also recognize JB, the past vice president. We appreciate. So if you can permit me, my PS,
Okay.
Prof, let me quickly, so that it may be a closing remark from our speaker, let me quickly read all the questions in the chat. And we still have a mass hand up, and we summarize with that. So I'll quickly read all the questions in the Q&A so that you can summarize and we close. So we have one from Orelo Atoja. Orelo Atoja. He's asking, do we really have calls from outcrops in Nigeria that can be used for laboratory investigation of pore structures, capillary pressure, and fluid flow? He's asking whether we have cores actually in Nigeria that we can use to investigate pore, P-O-R-E structures, capillary pressure, and fluid flow. We have another one from an anonymous attendee. He said, please, can the Enugu growth spot slide with two men be interpreted for better understanding of the audience and young geoscientists? He's asking if the slide can be interpreted for better understanding of the attendees. We have one from Dr. Nomneze. He's asking, what impact does a channel cut on shore face environment have on reservoir performance of the entire system? That's an interesting one. So
repeat it, please.
What impact does a channel cut on shore face environment have on reservoir performance of the entire system? I think this is coming from our speaker's discussion on EOD. So another anonymous attendee said, excellent presentation, Prof. Thank you. Can you kindly discuss more on the effect of EOD on water cloning during well completion? These are really top questions. Can you discuss more on the effect of EOD, environment of deposition, on water cloning during well completion? Yet another from Gilbert Chongwine is asking, please, can it be possible to get the slide presentation? I know Prof has good answer. So we have just this. Thank you, Prof, from Emmanuel Adewole. Thanks, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. In areas where outcrops are not easily recognizable or seen, such as Chad Basin, which is currently being given attention, do you think one can extrapolate nearest sedimentary outcrops to properly determine what goes on the subsurface? He said this from Dr. Emmanuel Adewole, Chief Operating Officer, PCS at Tech Nigeria Limited. Some places like Chad Basin, where there are not readily available outcrops, he is asking whether it could be extrapolated to nearby sedimentary outcrops. We also have one from SER. He said the loss of aspects of that iconic outcrop with growth faults you alluded to calls for proactivity in terms of preservation of study sites for works. Could NMGS and NAPE do something to preserve these outcrops as geoheritage sites for the training and practice for geoscience? So finally, Timi from African Petroleum Producers, that's Temilola from African Petroleum Producers Organization. What is NAPE doing in? He didn't complete that. That's all we have from the chat. If Emma, okay, Emma's hand is still on. So Emma, that's the final question. If Emma asks your question so that Prof wraps it up, so that we can go for lunch.
Okay, Dr. B, thank you very much. Confirm you can hear me.
We can, go ahead.
Perfect. Mine is very brief. I've just put a comment thanking Prof for energizing us. Mine is a comment following from what Professor Keke Nwozo said. Let's face the reality. We are beginning to lose the outcrops, geological outcrops. We are beginning to lose it to developments in Nigeria. And when I mean development, I mean road construction, people building houses, real estates here and there. Driving through Onitsha to Enugu last week, I realized that the beautiful Omonja outcrops that we studied during our mini conference have been fully bastardized because they are developing estates there, both residential and commercial estates. Driving through Ogwachi, Seloku, going to Kwale, you will see that it's being sold to private companies and individuals developing estates. Now, if I marry these new developments with Prof's erudite presentation, Prof's presentation hammered on, the topic is on hydrocarbons in the outcrops. Mine is to prefer a solution that NAPE may want to consider. Can each chapter go home now that we still have these outcrops, the remaining outcrops? Can each please go home and see a way of recording all these outcrops and then preserving it in digital formats? Because time is coming when nobody will see any outcrops. What we'll be seeing there will be filling stations, beautiful plazas, beautiful residential homes. And talking about geology, it becomes so archaic and extinct. Thank you. Prof, thanks once again.
Thank you.
Well captured. Prof, you have the floor. Just summarize.
Yeah, just quickly talking about following up on what Dr. Madawi just stated. The main issue is, first of all, from the side of the association called NAPE, what can we do? He is suggesting that individual chapters should get out and record. And one way or the other, these days of digital technology, try and record these outcrops in their various ways. First of all, let's still have a semblance of these outcrops, and then go ahead and talk about their use for academic interpretation and preservation. Yes, we have to really sit down and think. These outcrops that are being destroyed, ironically, are exposing new phases of the same sedimentary material. So, in a quarry, for instance, you go log a section, come back in another few weeks or months, and that section you logged gone because the excavator has already removed it. It may now expose a new section. So what you do is first get a proper record, like Hima has recommended. It is virtually impossible to stop for you to even go and get the National Assembly to do it, to do an act that stops people touching any area you consider to be national heritage. If you do that, like was done by Professor Peters in Formosan area, may his soul rest in peace. Now, Peters tried to preserve some iconic structures in Formosan. That is to point of gazetting, to actually gazetting these exposures. And eventually somebody went there and bulldozed everything. So the nature of our people is that development, once there's money, development is foremost. They are not interested in whatever academic stuff you're talking about. So what Ima has just suggested is very, very pertinent to this. Make sure in terms of efforts driven by the individual chapters, let's get to study those iconic sections. And I'll thank Ima for this suggestion. And that takes me to the question by saying, I don't know whether it is the great old say of Uniport, I know. I suppose that's him. And say should note that his area in Mukodi, in Yandev and such places are full of such iconic structures, which we now think the best thing would be to study, go and study them and record them and archive them such that when we talk about them, at least we see them there, even if they are just preserved as pictures, as whatever interpretations, let's see that they are somehow preserved. Instead of having them bulldozed and no record whatsoever. So for Dr. Say, I'm going on to answer this last question first. Dr. Say, or Professor Say, or whoever, please note that it's a lot of regret. The Enugu growth fault, which many people eventually acknowledged is a growth fault, and have gone to study, take a look at them and study and do all sorts of things around them. For now, that area has been covered. It was covered by material dug up from somebody who is trying to build a road up to his place. In fact, a geologist, who is this Philip, that confronted him at Enugu, eventually got an answer. I never knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't realize I was. In any case, how do I build a road to access my house? So it's a pity. That place can only be seen, fortunately, for some photographs of it are available, some discussion available, and some published literature. I don't need to go further because I can be confused. But I tell you honestly, that place is covered. The more painful part is that somewhere 14 kilometers thereabout from Mega Station on the route to Korakot, the express to Korakot, before the turn off to Enugu State University of Science and Tech, a place called Amadu. Another growth fault was identified, described, is in some published material, but about a month ago, I passed through there and realized it's all dug up. If anybody wants to go study there now, he'll just see some vestiges that may be difficult to put together. And it could have been a very good place to take young geologists to and tell them what's going on, but it's now very difficult. It cannot convince even advanced geologists that a growth fault ever existed there. It's a pity, great pity. So that's what the last question, Dr. Say. If people are still hearing me, outcrops not available in a place like Chad, as was asked, whether you can project the knowledge you have or observations you can make on some other areas. The answer is yes. The answer can as well be no. So it's a qualified yes. Qualified in the sense that it depends on how far away. It depends on the fact that you may not be dealing with the same geological horizons, especially in terms of age. A bit of field work up there. When, for instance, you want to go to the airport in Gombe, you realize that you will be looking at quite a bit of the part of Chad Basin you call Keri Formation, flat line. But when you get to Gombe, you will now see that you have some exposures. And these exposures are of Gombe sandstone, menstruation, folded. If you want to use that to try to understand what's happening in Keri, wrong. Even if Keri might be near. That's what I mean by a very qualified yes. You can see Gombe sandstones, but you may not see Keri. If you think they are close enough for you to project information from Gombe into Chad Basin, is very, very difficult. I mean, it's dicey and will not be properly principled in the sense that Gombe area has a folding because it's a part of the Benue Trunk. But the Chad Basin is flat. It's not really in any way folded. So you will be transmitting a wrong information if you want to go from Gombe, you have noted, to Benue Trunk, to Chad Basin. Sorry. So the answer to this question is, where outcrops are not available, your only luck is to begin to look in the subsurface by the normal means. Physical means, in particular, using, if you can afford, first of all, vertical resistivity. Thermometer will do some of the work. Then you can also do, if you can afford it, seismic. that will now show you what is actually lying under. And then, of course, the simplest way maybe, when you're looking for water, you drill deep enough, get some of the samples, and do whatever, maybe paleontology, especially paleontology, that can be used to do some of the characterization. Then I go on to slides, my slides available. As had been indicated earlier, these talks given at the behest of the chapter are eventually archived. For now, these slides are available at the headquarters of so they can be accessed with some effort, some application. So that answers the question of availability of my slides. They are available, but you have to go through the normal route to get access to the archived material. The effect of environmental deposition on water coning. The word is C-O-N-E or C-O-N-I-N-G. That's a cone. A cone is actually the shape of the way the water accesses the oil. Remember that usually in water drive situations, what really happens is that directly production, the movement of the oil, let's assume oil, directly that movement gets near the bottom. It will now, water will now get in. And you can notice this from the production that now has a much or an increasing water cut, what's called water cut. That the proportion of water in the production is getting too high. Possibly you have water coning. So you try not to perforate too close to the base of the reservoir. This is what you should avoid, and only with a very clean, neat understanding of the reservoir you are producing. It's environmental deposition. I'll give an example just with the finding upward what has been visited, say, in a meandering river, and such meandering river deposits, point bars, are usually available in those areas of the top delta setting that is clearly continental, but now very close to the sea. Once you have that situation, eventually overlain by material that gets it properly buried for it to be charged, you are now looking at a reservoir that has a base where the water drive will just be waiting. It's helping to push the oil all right. But if you perforate close to that water contact, definitely you have water coning. So you should know the reservoir. That's why the environmental deposition is pretty critical. You need to know it. So you can see that in the whole matter of production, it's all matter of E&T. The geologist has a lot on his shoulders. Usually training will decide whether you are a seismologist, an interpreter. You can even go to drilling as a geologist. The geologist is multitasker. He understands a lot. Very often specialized in one area, but environmental deposition for the sedimentologist is critical. Now, the other fellow that is asking about channel cut on shore face.
Prof, that's I think let's round off with that one. Let me see if I can trace it and read it. The one of channel from Anamnese. It says, what impact does a channel cut
not hearing anymore.
We lost you.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. It says, what impact does a channel cut on surface environment have on reservoir performance of the entire system?
Let me hope I understand the question.
How does a channel cut on a surface environment impact reservoir performance?
I'm sure that my good old Joe will answer this question a lot better than I can do. But let me assume that once you're talking about channel cut, you are discussing what could as well be submarine canyon that conducts material from as far near shore as even the beach areas. So for surface, depends on whether you're talking about upper, middle, or lower surface. And let me assume middle surface. Once the WT material has been triggered, WT current starts flowing. It depends on its energy. It can flow very fast. It can flow slowly, such that eventually some of the material is deposited along the channel. That material that's deposited along the channel will now be good enough reservoir for oil to actually be to accumulate in it. And the impact that channel will have is to accumulate you petroleum. Or now I have a suspicion that a lot of what's being produced right now in our offshore, deeper offshore, is actually from channels that have been that had conducted material into deeper offshore. I wish we had time. I would have invited Joe to speak on this, to contribute to this.
Yeah, well, if it's a channel cut in a surface, it depends on what the channel fill is. It might not, if I guess it's talking of the reservoir performance of the surface.
Yes.
If it is cut by a channel. Now, if it's cut by a channel and the channel has good reservoir properties, I don't think it will have negative impact on the performance of the
reservoir, yes.
Surface sand. But if the cut is such that you have an infill that has, like you were discussing in your presentation, if it is a case in which you have an initial shale layer, at the bottom before the channel came in, you may have some baffles, but I don't think it will have negative impact on the performance of the reservoir.
We just assume reservoir fill. We assume reservoir fill. That's it. That's the way. Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Let me crave the indulgence of the coordinator of this chapter to tell me what to do next. There are two more questions. Two more questions, but whatever you ask me to do,
okay, Prof.
to your service. Mm-hmm.
We have to thank you very much.
Okay.
You have done more than needed. If we want to get every fruit from the Europe tree, we may end up falling from there.
You don't climb down the way you climbed up. I agree.
So, and we have done justice to this. I have to thank the chairman, Ogaju. We are grateful. There should be an episode for presentation of certificates, and as many this is amazing. We still have over 60 people on the call. We reached 140 for the first time. I mean, this is great in a chapter meeting. This is great. And we still have over people. Even we have Temilola still raising his hand. I want to plead with Temilola. Prof will get across to you, or you can chat me up. He will answer your question. He has really answered. I mean, this is the largest attempt to questions that
actually, people can reach me. People can reach me. People are free to reach me look up my number and reach me. That's the way to, so that those guys that are still waiting for their question, it's a pity. We just have to proceed. But they can reach me privately, please. My number is available, one place or the other. NAPE headquarters and so on. A chapter coordinator, you can, anybody needing my number, please let them. I don't have.
All right. Thank you very much for that open door policy. So,
I don't want to disappoint
the
those
call. This is more like the final prayer given the. I want to recognize that Tunde is still on this call. I know he will be interfacing between this and the ongoing meeting. Tunde, we are very grateful. My chairman, Oga Joe, you must have also received a soft copy of your certificate. Please confirm that to us, sir.
Yes, I did, but there was an error.
Okay, sir, we will look into that. Thank you very much. Our speaker also confirmed that you got your certificate.
Yes, it's so beautiful on soft copy, and I want it.
You get the hard copy.
I want it hard. I want it hard. Thank you.
Right. We still also have on this call the PTDF Professor of Geology. That's Ayoma Mode. Prof is on the call. We appreciate your presence on this call. We thank our Deputy Coordinator Adobe is still on the call. We thank Kelvin from France. We are grateful for Oge Sabinus. And we are happy to have John Bosco Uche, that's the past Vice President. We would like to hear you, sir. Oga JB, if you can say hi, we appreciate.
No, many thanks, my chapter coordinator, Dr. Dean. Excited to see the progress Awka is doing. And again, my dear Prof and Dr. Joe, I've enjoyed every single bit of this. So well done, and well done everybody still on the call.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Javi, thank you.
Yeah. On behalf of Owerri chapter and the ESCO and the Advisory Council, I want to thank each and every one of us. Earlier on, I saw Delia of AAPG on the call. I also saw a lot of people. I saw Cynthia, IBA, a lot of people, staff, students, lecturers, industry practitioners. We are grateful. And on that note, on that happy note, wish us a lovely day, even as we go for lunch. Thank you, everyone. Do have a wonderful midweek.
Thank you, my coordinator.
Okay, then. It's been a great pleasure being of service. Thank you very
so much, coordinator, and thank you, everyone.
Very much. Thank you, Prof. And thank you, my coordinator. Good day.
Thank you, Sabinus.
Sabinus, get ready to host us. Thank you.
Prof, you need hosting.
I will. And that fossil drink is here, sir.
Great. Okay.
You,
good.
Yes.
Good. All the best, huh?
Okay, bye.
Bye, Joe. All the best, huh? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
It's been a great day.
Love you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Well done.
Thank you. Tunde.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well done, sir.
You choose from where I thank you. Is it from the bottom of my heart or any other bottom?
Prof, he did that fossil. You know that fossil stuff you usually give people. Tunde needs it.
Exactly, yes. I'm ready to have you get it. No, the fossil stuff, yes.
Tunde, you'll be surprised if you take that.
Now, Tunde, the trouble is that fossil is very close to you. If I then have to somehow ask Dr. Madawi to spare you one specimen of it. They are in Lagos. Is there in Lagos?
All right.
I will connect you to Madawi. I'll connect you to him.
It's okay.
Well,
good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.